Let's take a look at our Chairman's Circle qualifiers for 2019. The Chairman's Circle recognizes our top producers throughout the country with at least $200,000 in new booked revenue or net book growth. Let's start with our top producers in net book growth. From BB&H Benefit Designs, Deborah Babineau with $237,000 in net book growth. From Sloan Levitt Insurance, Dallin Calloway, $257,000 in net book growth. From Levitt Group Northwest, Daniel Olson, $270,000 in net book growth. From Levitt Group of Portland, Nathan Hirsch, $299,000 in net book growth. From GBS Benefits, Landon Fielding, $319,000 in net book growth. From GBS Benefits, Christian Coons, $325,000 in net book growth. From GBS Benefits, Rick Fielding, $377,000 in net book growth. From GBS Benefits, Gordon Brown, $385,000 in net book growth. From Farmer Woods Group, Chris Duncan, $403,000 in net book growth. And our top producer for net book growth in 2019, and the recipient of the Bert J. Levitt Award for net book growth from Farmer Woods Group, Tim Woods, $427,000 in net book growth. Let's take a look at the Levitt Elite Circle for 2019. Qualification for the Elite Circle requires a positive book of business growth over the prior year, or a minimum of $125,000 in new book business for the current year. Let's start with the Silver Elite Circle. These producers have a book of business from $1 million to $1.49 million. From Levitt Pacific Insurance Brokers, Carl Hawkins. From Randy Jones and Associates, Jonathan Pfeiffer. From Dixie Levitt Agency, Jaron Hunt. From Levitt Group Midwest, Brad Stamler. From Levitt United Insurance Services, Bill Lapat. From GBS Benefits, Laura Pfeiffer. From Farmer Woods Group, Chris Duncan. From Levitt Group Northwest, Daniel Olson. From Powers Levitt Insurance, Charlene Powers Broadbent. From Hancock Levitt Insurance, Monty Hancock. From GBS Benefits, Mark Johnson. From CIA Levitt Insurance, Dan Bowers. From Levitt Great West Insurance, Jay Jameson. From Farmer Woods Group, Tim Woods. From Levitt Insurance Agency, Jarek Levitt. Now let's take a look at our Gold Elite Circle. These producers have a book of business from $1.5 to $1.9 million in revenue. From GBS Arizona, Don Mullahan. From Risk Services of Louisiana, Vlad Chimadorov. From Berrien Insurance Group, Joel Berrien. Now let's take a look at our Platinum Elite Circle. These producers have a book of business from $2 million to $2.49 million. From GBS Benefits, Rob Ferguson. From Levitt Insurance Agency, Tim Woodruff. Now to our top tier, the Diamond Elite Circle. These producers have a book of business from $2.5 million and above. From GBS Benefits, Gordon Brown. From GBS Benefits, Scott Stewart. From GBS Benefits, Jeff Kluge. From LR Weber Associates, Booker Moore. And our top producer for the Diamond Elite Circle for 2019, from GBS Benefits, Rick Fielding. Congratulations again to our 2019 Elite Circle. Let's take a look at our top 10 new producers for 2019. These are producers that have been licensed in the business for 3 years or under. From Risk Services of Louisiana, Tony Murray. From CIA Levitt Insurance, Brian Wallingsford. From Sloan Levitt Insurance, Christine Madera. From Dixie Levitt Agency, Joe Ellis. From Risk Services of Louisiana, Clark Fulton. From Levitt Great West Insurance, Aaron Weenum. From GBS Benefits, Casey Comadina. From Risk Services of Louisiana, Matt Hadley. From Levitt Great West Insurance, Holly Hovland. And our top new producer for 2019 from Sloan Levitt Insurance, Dallin Calloway, with $406,000 in new written business.
Good morning. We a warm welcome to all of you, to all of our Levitt and Carrier colleagues. It's absolutely fantastic to be with you again virtually, and thank you for joining us for the second general session of this historic conference. In this session, we look forward to honoring the contribution and performance of our top producers, account managers, and agencies. And we're also excited to be joined by some special guest speakers from the Council of Insurance Agents and Brokers, as well as Michael O. Levitt, founder of Levitt Partners, former Utah governor and U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services, Levitt Group Enterprises board member, and of course, most importantly, brother to both Eric and Mark Levitt. And in addition to those guests, Eric Levitt will present his Chairman's Award, and we'll be blessed by our annual opportunity to hear perspectives from our founders, Dixie and Ann Levitt, which will be an absolute treat. We look forward to that. Just give a couple minutes here for people to join us, and we will get started. As we have people still joining us, but we can go ahead and get started. We'll begin this session by spotlighting our sponsor, WCF. Laura Steyerman, WCF's VP of Sales Operations, is here to share a few words in their behalf, followed by the presentation of the Sandra A. Maxwell Account Manager of the Year Award by Kaylor Dally, Senior Executive Vice President of Agency Operations. Let's go ahead and go to WCF.
Thanks, Vance. I think it's my turn. Sorry, we might be on a little delay here at WCF, so sorry about that. The joys of virtual. Well, thanks, Vance. We're excited. On behalf of WCF, I wanted to say thank you to all of our friends at the Levitt Group for the opportunity to participate in another conference. I would normally ask that all of my WCF colleagues stand to be recognized, but with the Zoom platform and working from home, I think it's best that we all stay seated. Like the Levitt Group, we have a strong foundation in the communities we serve, and protecting workers has always been one of our key missions. Now we're doing even more by supporting COVID relief efforts and creating solutions to work safely. We have made numerous donations to assist small businesses and are doing all we can to ensure policyholders weather this storm. The Levitt relationship is critical to the WCF story of success. We are proud to work with the Levitt agency partners in 6 states and are excited to support and grow with you in the coming years. From all of us at WCF, thanks for your time today. We're looking forward to seeing you in person next year or sooner. Enjoy the rest of your conference and be careful out there.
Thank you, Laura, and the WCF partnership. We appreciate your sponsorship as well. It's now my honor to present this year's Sandra A. Maxwell Account Manager of the Year Award. This year's recipient is Sherry Sharp of Risk Services of Louisiana. Sherry, after this quick video, we'd ask that you say a few words.
Having had the opportunity to work with Sandra, I can attest to her wonderful personality, strong work ethic, and desire to serve others. She's a fantastic person. This year's recipient is no different. She's been a trusted account manager for more than 20 plus years, serving with excellence to both her clients and agency associates. She has serviced the agency's largest state municipality clients, refined the agency's claims department, and continues to work the agency's VIP accounts. Both clients and her fellow employees give her glowing recommendations as to her insurance knowledge and attention to detail. She's a trusted friend and coworker whom everyone can always count on to get the job done. In light of the pandemic, the agency's owner spoke with several customers last week and asked if they had felt any change in the level of service they were receiving from the office. One of the recipient's clients, an administrator of a large social services account in Houston, Texas, replied, Not at all. And I would not expect anything else from y'all. Please welcome to the virtual stage Sherry Sharp from Risk Services of Louisiana to receive this year's Sandra A. Maxwell Account Manager of the Year Award. Congratulations, Sherry.
Thank you. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Been in insurance all my life, and this is just really a great honor. And I'm really, again, just overwhelmed. I'm looking at retirement in the next couple of months, but I'll still be staying on in a semi part-time basis, hoping to mentor to the other employees at RSL and share my hopefully vast knowledge with them to help them in the future. And again, thank you so very much. I appreciate this.
Congratulations, Sherry. We are very excited to recognize our top 2 producers of 2019 in the categories of net book growth and new booked revenue.
The Bert J. Levitt Producer of the Year Award recognizes Levitt Group's top performing producer and is the highest honor an individual producer can receive. Bert Levitt, the older brother of Dixie Levitt, was the first co-owner of a Levitt Group agency, forming Levitt Insurance Agency in Las Vegas, Nevada. Bert was a very successful producer from his industry beginnings in 1959 until his passing in 1982. Bert spent much of his time working to improve the insurance industry, culminating in his being elected president of the National Association of Professional Insurance Agents in 1980. He provided an excellent legacy for his 3 sons, son-in-law, and 4 grandsons who have followed in his footsteps as insurance professionals. Bert's many clients knew he had their best interests at heart, and insurance carriers knew that Bert would represent them with integrity and energy. These aligned interests allowed Bert to be a very successful insurance salesman, a position he was proud to fill.
Hello, everyone. I wish we were here in person, but you're getting me on the video. 2019 was a great year, and I'm hoping that 2020 turns around and becomes a good year. We've had our challenges this year with the COVID-19, and we're still in the midst of it and trying to figure out what's going to happen to us. But with that being said, I am very honored to be here to accept this award. I could not have done it without the underwriters from the insurance companies, my team. I really feel like it's a team award because of all they do, and couldn't have done it without my wife, Laura. Laura is truly a support to me and my biggest fan. So hopefully we'll be together next year, see each other in person. I truly miss seeing all of you. I enjoy the conversations and seeing what everybody is doing, but hopefully next year we'll be together. With that being said, I appreciate the award and look forward to more in the future.
Hello, everybody. Tim Woods here, Farmer Woods Group in sunny, warm Phoenix, Arizona. Super bummed that we weren't able to have y'all out here this year in North Scottsdale to enjoy this beautiful June weather that we have here in the Valley of the Sun. But we'll get you back soon enough and torture you. On behalf of my partners here at Farmer Woods and the entire team, I wanted to humbly and yet pridefully accept the Bert J. Levitt Producer of the Year Award. It is absolutely a collective effort, and while you see my mug on the screen, there is an entire team, entire army behind me that obviously plays into this, as well as our loyal, wonderful clients here in the Valley. So thank you so much. Hopefully we'll make it extremely tough going forward on the competition for this award, and maybe it won't be our last one. Look forward to the future, and we will see y'all soon. Hopefully you're all staying very productive out there through this interesting time. All right, take care.
Well, congratulations, Tim and Tim, for an amazing, outstanding 2019 performance. Well done. That is fantastic. And I'll just note Tim Woodruff loved that beard, and I think now he is tied or surpassed Rod Levitt as having won that award more than anyone else in our organization. So well done. We're grateful for your efforts. Speaking of an amazing performance, next up, we are thrilled to have two amazing gentlemen who have been working night and day advocating for our industry during these crazy last few months. Joel Wood and Joel Copperwood lead the Government Affairs Division of the Council of Insurance Agents and Brokers, of which the Levitt Group is a member. And they are the absolute secret weapons behind our council PAC contributions. We're grateful for all of your contributions throughout our group. And they're here to share with us what's been happening on the front lines of an emerging battle regarding who should actually pay for all of these damages associated with this pandemic and our industry's response. I know they have great influence in Washington and great connections and contacts. Very grateful for their service and efforts on our behalf. Many of you know them well, and so we're thrilled to have them with us. And one of my most brilliant Office of the CEO colleagues, Mike Chister, Levitt Group Enterprises General Counsel, will actually moderate and guide the discussion today. He was the smartest one of our group that we could have actually guide this discussion. So anyway, take it away, Mike.
Thanks, Vance. I would definitely disagree with the suggestion that I'm the smartest one around, but at least I'm willing to do this. So we are very, very excited to have Joel and Joel here to share some of their insights with us. I'm going to go through and ask some questions, but you'll see at the bottom of the Zoom screen there is a place there, Q&A. So if you have a question that you would like us to pose to the panelists during this half-hour discussion, please type it in the Q&A box, not the chat box. We're not going to monitor that for questions, but the Q&A box, and if we have time, we'll get to those questions. So let's dive right in. I will ask a question, and then I'll ask both of our guests to respond to it, but we'll alternate who begins. So we'll start on this one with Joel Copperwood. And obviously, one of the biggest issues that's facing our industry right now are the business income interruption claims that many trial lawyers are out trying to get clients to file. Our clients would obviously like coverage. Carriers are saying it's excluded. Politicians are suggesting that carriers should pay the claims even if they are excluded. And then earlier this week, we saw a court in Europe actually order a carrier to cover these types of claims. And so I guess our question is, where do you see this issue going? And is there a possibility of some sort of legislative fix or remedy for this?
That's a good question. It's a loaded question. First of all, let me say thank you. Thank you for having us, and thanks for all you guys do for the council. We can't do what we do from a government affairs perspective or from an industry perspective without your leadership. I know Levitt has been at the table for well over a decade with this group. I've been with the organization for 12 years. My colleague Joel Wood's been at the organization for like 23 years, I think, 25 years maybe. But you guys have been incredible resource, incredible leadership on all the issues. So let me just get that out of the way and say thank you, and thank you for having us and listening to us and guiding us. The business interruption issue has been wildly frustrating. I mean, if it wasn't in the contract, it wasn't in the contract, right? And that's kind of where we all started. We've been listening to the carriers at the beginning saying it's excluded. It's been excluded for I don't want to say forever, but I had an industry dinner for the chairwoman of the Financial Services Committee the Wednesday before we went into lockdown in DC. And I was talking to the insurance carrier's chief lobbyist, and she was saying this is going to be a major battle because pandemics are not excluded. Virus exclusions are rampant. It's an issue. And since then, we've seen somewhat of an evolution that there might be a case-by-case basis. There were some organizations that actually did purchase the coverage. We know that Wimbledon is a big case that's thrown around that actually bought the coverage. Some of our members, Marsh namely, has created a product that actually does sell pandemic insurance. Now, they will tell you no one bought that product. But yeah, I mean, this has been a big issue politically. You've got all the policyholder community, driven mostly by the restaurant groups, saying, hey, I thought I had business interruption insurance, and now you're telling me I don't. So it's been, it's been a real reputational issue on the Hill, though I do think we're starting to see the end of the debate. I don't want to say it was the nail in the coffin on this, but it was close to it. I think it was the beginning of the end of this debate, which was a hearing in the House Small Business Committee 2 weeks ago that was certainly created to be a platform for the policyholder community and for the restaurant groups to really launch bombs at the insurance industry and say that they should be getting their claims paid. And it ended with a whimper. And even the policyholder groups were saying they recognize that, their goal is to get money, to get cash on the books to keep their companies alive. And they know that it's a contractual issue. It's going to get tied up in the courts. They're likely to lose, and it's not going to fit their end goal. So we saw them pivot in that hearing to finding a prospective solution to help everybody. And that prospective solution is still controversial. We haven't figured out what that is yet. We've all got our ideas. But I think we're starting to see the win from the sales of the BI, retroactive BI coverage start to fade. Joel, would you agree with that?
I would, and thank you. Could I just say at the outset, Mike, Vance, y'all were incredibly generous to host me at this meeting live in person a year or two ago. I want to echo what Joel has said about how extraordinary our partnership has been. For me personally, I've been at the council for 27 years. I left Capitol Hill working for a Reagan Revolution Republican in 1988. That's why when you saw the first screenshot, Joel was on your left and I was on your right. And when I first left the Hill, my first job was working at the old PIA. And the chairman of my government affairs committee was Rod Levitt. So I worked there for 4 years and have been at this job for a long time since. And I just can't tell you how closely we regard you and how generous you have been. There are more than 150 different insurance political action committees, and we have the largest of all of them. And it's you're a firm, certainly with Governor Levitt, who is so brilliant on all things, especially in the benefits front, who's been so generous to us as well over the years, and has been a partner of ours. We've been a client of the Levitt partners for their expertise on employee benefits related issues. But you guys get it politically. We're so appreciative. It's, we used to go to, breakfast, luncheons, receptions, and dinners every day. And now we're careening from one Zoom call to another. We had hosted Leader McConnell last week. I've got other candidates coming up. On BI, though, Joel, pretty much right. I think the whole notion of retroactive imposition of BI is over. Just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get me. But we've seen it in 7, 8 legislatures. It is not advanced anywhere. Even a number of Joel's friends on the Democratic side that are in leadership positions have clearly stated that retroactive imposition is not going to happen. So you're going to have the legal battles that are probably going to take years to play on out, the whole issue of the intersection of civil authority with direct physical damage, with viral contagion. We know that there are some distinctions between some of the policies, and if businesses have legitimate claims to those dollars, then brokers are in support of their clients. Will the trial lawyers find some magic jurisdictions where they may prevail? I would bet they will. I still believe that the overwhelming majority of coverages did not include this, and so. I look actually to across the pond particularly to the UK, where their legal system, they've got their financial regulators that are throwing test cases on any vulnerabilities of BI policies to the courts and hoping to have results by July. I think that will be telling. And so the question then is, prospective pandemic risk. And I think a lot of people get confused on that because they think, well, does that mean when COVID comes raging back in the fall or the winter, when that's buying insurance when your house is on fire? We're talking about beyond that. And we have been given firm instructions by our board. Eric is on our board of directors and has been my government affairs chair to lean in terms of utilization of existing insurance market mechanisms, but we have great respect for the carrier position that from a bandwidth perspective and an insurability perspective, this has really got to be a federal government solution. And so we just want to be a part of what ultimately is a solution for our clients. And I think that that's going to evolve over time. Last comment on that is that even after 9/11, it took Congress 14 months to enact the Terrorism Risk Insurance Act. And so, I know there's you're going to see a lot of activity on this, and I would not be surprised if in the next layer of relief legislation coming out of the House of Representatives that they put Congresswoman Maloney's PREA, which is designed after TRIA, onto that. But I just think that the likelihood of that actually getting to the finish line is extremely slim right now. We just want to be a part of that dialogue going on. So again, apologize for the long answer, but I just wanted to thank you again so much for this opportunity.
Thanks, both of you, for those responses. That was great. Obviously our clients are concerned about business interruption claims, but some who are beginning to reopen their businesses to clients are also concerned about future claims where, if a client somehow or contracts the virus at their place of business, whether they are going to be liable and whether they will have coverage for that. We've heard some rumblings about some liability protections that the legislature may enact. What's the latest on that? And we'll start with you, Joel.
Thanks. I mentioned we did the call with Leader McConnell last week, and no surprise, didn't make any news on this, but he has drawn a bright red line on the issue of no more massive federal expenditure bills in the absence of liability relief. He's clear that he's not talking about a major preemption of state tort law. It would be specific to COVID. He wants it to be retroactive to December of 2019 all the way through 2024. That's ambitious. The simple reality is that the House of Representatives and Democrats, we had Representative Shalala, who was a predecessor to Governor Levitt as Secretary of HHS. She's now a Congresswoman. 3 or 4 weeks ago on a call with us, and we love her. She's fantastic. But she said that liability relief and changes to tort law are off the table and not even being discussed inside the Democratic caucus. So you've got the House having passed this $3 trillion additional economic stimulus/recovery fund, and it's quite a package. And then you've got Leader McConnell saying he's willing to entertain the notion of state and local government aid and some continuation and reforms of the Paycheck Protection Plan, but only on the condition of liability reforms. I think it would have to, what I see emerging, and I know you're having a lot of conversations about back to work and what the landscape is going to look like in the coming months. Is I'm already seeing, I saw on the television this morning, if you have concerns about your workplace, call this hotline at OSHA. I think hopefully what will emerge is some sort of safe harbors that if you're complying with CDC, if you're complying with OSHA standards and relevant state and local regulations, which is mind-boggling because we know that some of these are going to be in conflict with one another. But that some sort of safe harbor that if you're complying with all of that, that you will be, that you will have some indemnity. But, we're seeing in some of the, in California, for example, those of you in California, the Governor Newsom's executive order on workers' compensation, right now, the presumption is that not just for frontline workers, healthcare workers, grocery store clerks, et cetera, but for everyone that goes back to work, if you contract COVID, the presumption is that you got it at work, and the burden is on the employer. With respect to workers' compensation, the burden is on the employer to demonstrate that you got it elsewhere. So this is extremely challenging, and I think it has everything to do with whether or not we're going to be able to get to a significant recovery with people feeling safe enough to go back to work in a changed landscape. Thanks, Mike.
If I could follow up on that, I think I couldn't agree more with Joel Wood, but I need to make a few clarifications. Going into the bill that was just passed through the House, there was a lot of noise within the majority caucus, the Democratic caucus, was whether or not they want to make something that's bipartisan that can pass Leader McConnell's desk from the get-go, or do they want to do a marker bill that's going to be partisan and negotiate from there? It became very clear to Democratic leadership that they could not get anything through the House, through their caucus, that wasn't going to be a partisan bill. Pelosi said going into that there are no red lines in her bill. There are no red lines here. And shortly after that, we heard Leader Hoyer say he is supportive of liability reforms, particularly when liability protection, particularly for essential workers. But they were very open on the liability front. I think every industry organization downtown that I'm aware of has signed on to the effort for some sort of liability protections. And Leader McConnell has made it very clear, as Joel just said, that this is his red line. And so I think at the end of the day, I'm cautiously optimistic that we will see some sort of liability protections in whatever the next package looks like. I'm not sure what the parameters will be. It will be certainly at least for essential businesses. I can't imagine it wouldn't be expanded from that. But I wouldn't take that $3 trillion bill as the Democratic position on liability reform issues. But I should also note, in that bill, that was a behemoth bill, $3 trillion on top of everything that's already been spent, and there's going to be more around the corner, which is starting to get somewhat controversial. But I mean, given the dire straits that we face, potential depression, unemployment rates, economic hemorrhaging, all of that, there's going to be more packages around the corner. But there was a lot in that $3 trillion bill that we supported, that we've been advocating for a long time. One thing that we'll get into later on is the impact on employer-sponsored insurance and the major threats to ESI that stems from high unemployment rates. We've been joining our employer allies and union allies in advocating for 100% subsidies for COBRA policies so that people that are furloughed or lay off don't lose their health care and they can stay on the plans. We got that in the $3 trillion bill that was passed by the House. We got some of the major changes to the PPP program that we've been advocating for, some more transparency, making sure that we can hopefully streamline the money. We're also advocating for an alternative to the PPP program, which we'll get into later, that will hopefully make it much more seamless for your clients to get money through the insurance infrastructure. But there was a lot of good things in that bill. And I think I would be shocked if the final bill didn't include some sort of liability protections for more than essential businesses.
From your lips to God's ear on Democrats moderating their position on this, but it'll be interesting to see here in the next.
I mean, the majority of the caucus, when you think about the Democratic caucus, you got to think about it in three sections, right? You've got the conservative blue dogs who consider themselves the fiscal hawks of the caucus. You've got the New Democrats who are the majority pro-business centrist part of the caucus, and you've got the progressives who are the far left. You'll never get the progressives there. You just won't. But to get anything through the caucus, you got to get the New Dems and the Blue Dogs. And that's where you see leadership falling in line with. Even Speaker Pelosi, who has obviously got one of the most progressive records in history, is now being deemed as one of the most fiscally responsible, moderate legislators within the caucus. Because to get anything through the House, she's got to thread the needle through the Blue Dogs and through the New Dems. And the only reason they won the majority and the only reason that she is Speaker is because they flipped 40 seats, went from Republican to Democrat, and those members of the caucus that replaced those Republicans are members of either New Dogs or Blue Dems, and to maintain majority, they have to win re-election, and she has to give them pro-business solutions. And so you're seeing the caucus veer that direction. Anyways, that might sound a little defensive, but I have to do a little clarifying there.
I just want to make sure that your brain is hearing what your mouth is saying.
Well, speaking of employer-sponsored health insurance, with all of the job losses, obviously people are losing their health insurance too, which is kind of re-energizing the single-payer proponents. And you mentioned the COBRA subsidies in the bill that will hopefully help some of that. But what do you see as the future of employer-sponsored health insurance, and what effect will the pandemic have on that?
I will say, on the one, it's an interesting contrast. And again, Governor Leavitt's going to have the deepest insight into this, but everyone recognizes that, and we've seen it directly from the left, with Bernie himself being in opposition to the COBRA framework because he believes that it's going to perpetuate employer-sponsored insurance. and other members of the squad, when you think of AOC and the far left of the Democratic Party, on the one hand, is going to put incredible pressure on the preservation of the system. And we've historically faced challenges on this from both the left and the right. From the left, obviously the Medicare for All crowd, but from the right, historically, the sort of pure consumer-driven healthcare purists who think that until we as a country start asking our docs, how much does that MRI you're sending me across the hallway cost, as opposed to what I could shop for 5 miles down the road, and we've sort of put that to rest during tax reform in 2017 when Speaker Ryan wanted to roll back the tax exemption. And a lot of Republicans felt that way, but we really had great success in just burying that notion. So we have, I think the threats from the right have diminished, but we're seeing that crowd sort of popping back up in this environment. But you have to look at, where is Joe Biden on this? And Joe Biden is facing pressures now from the left because he wants that enthusiasm. He, to date, is for a vibrant public option, which we view as potentially threatening because of the cost shift to employers if you've got government imposed below market rates on a public option available to all. And he's also for lowering the Medicare age to 60. I would remind everyone, when Barack Obama was elected, he had a 79-seat majority in the House of Representatives, and he had that ironclad 60 votes filibuster-proof majority until Ted Kennedy passed away for his first 2 years. And still, only by the slimmest skin of his teeth did he get through the ACA with a lot of compromises in it and no public option. And so, tell me what this election is going to look like. We could speculate on it, but in Joel's, in the fantasy world of the fondest dreams of many of my friends on the left, it's still really hard to see how they get to 60 votes. I can envision consolidated Democratic control. So, it's on the one hand, we've never seen anything like this. We've never seen this kind of pressure on the system, and 40 million uninsured is breathtaking. On the other hand, I don't know that I have seen the cataclysm in the political environment. Joel, your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I would, it's interesting. So it's the single payer movement has been alive and well for well over 4 years. Bernie Sanders came this close to getting the Democratic nomination, and boom, the threat of a Sanders nominee forced the party to, everyone jumped ship and threw their weight behind Biden. I think that's great for the future of the Medicare for All movement and its threat. But the end goal is how does the party unify? And we would be remiss not to recognize what's happening with the protests and the George Floyd movement right now, and the impact that that's going to be having on this debate and on the election. It's very real, obviously. The conversations that I've been on, this is, if anything for the Democratic Party, this might unify it and might increase turnout, but increased turnout is probably going to come from the base and from the far left. This is, of course, assuming that we have a free and fair election in November. But if we do, I would lightly put it on with the polling and everything that's held today. It looks like it's probably going to go to Biden. That anything could happen. But yeah, I don't think the question is there going to be a public option under Democratic control? It is, what is it going to look like? And we've got 6 variations of a public option being considered in the United States Senate today. The most offensive one is complete evisceration of our industry and full single payer. That won't garner enough votes to get, I think there are maybe 8 senators that support that, and most of them have been running for president. And the most watered down version of the public option has the parameters such as a public option, a Medicare policy could only be purchased on an exchange, can only cover individuals in an area that is demonstrably no competition. You have one carrier, and it will only cover the essential health benefits in that state and no more. And then you've got variations in between, allowing you to buy into Medicare for 60 and up, which Joe Biden supports. You got proposals to allow small groups of 50 and under to purchase a Medicare policy. So the question is, what is the parameters going to look like? And I will note that the number one issue driving people to the polls on both sides of the aisle for the past several years has been healthcare and skyrocketing health costs. And we are doing everything we can, not just to underscore the strengths of ESI in the delivery system, but also to address the root cause. And the root cause is not the delivery mechanism. The root cause is rising costs and the lack of transparency with the cost system and the supply chain, particularly looking at PBMs and a lot of their business models, and getting costs under control. As Joel noted, the cost shifting is not going to solve the solution, even with a public option. You can look at the countries across the world that have single payer system, and their costs are still out of control, and they haven't figured out how to rein this in. So we need to address the underlying problem, which is costs. And we are making babies. We've been saying this for a decade, and we're starting to finally make this an issue. We've seen positive legislation come out of the Senate Health Committee, come out of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. I think that nothing legislatively on this is going to happen this year, but I think a lot is probably going to happen next year, no matter who wins the White House. And reining in costs has got to be a key component, and we need to do everything we can to keep this public option on the books as limited as possible. But I don't see any sense, barring Trump's reelection, I don't see a scenario where a public option is not on the books within the next 5 years.
Thank you for that insight. We have a question here from Vlad Chimatarov, our partner down in Houston. He wants to know who writes the daily updates from the council. He thinks they're awesome. I think that's probably you, Joel Wood.
Thank you. Yeah, I do have a couple of people that do the edits, but I started out as a daily newspaper reporter before I came to work on Capitol Hill, and it's been fun to sort of to harken back to those days. But we do have a daily newsletter, and I would love for everybody, frankly, you guys spend a lot of money to be members of the council. I want you to feel like you're getting your money's worth. Please just my email, jwood@cib.com. Just if you're not getting the daily newsletter and any of our other material, we know everybody's inbox is blowing up and we're all going from one Zoom call to another Zoom call, but we're trying to just curate the broker specific things that are relevant and trying to make it in an interesting flow. But thanks for that comment.
Yeah. All right, we're running a little short on time here, so I want to move to the question I think everybody has, and that's let's fast forward 6 months from now, and we wake up on November 4th, and what does our government look like? What's the makeup of our federal government on that day?
You go first, Joel.
No, man, this is a loaded question. I think I'm most comfortable talking about the Senate right now. I think, the presidential race is going to be fascinating, and there are so many moving components to that race. The Senate, you're seeing a massive, Republicans hold a 4-seat majority. To flip it, Democrats need to win 4 seats. There are 6 seats that over the past several weeks, particularly since the COVID outbreak, that have swung. If you're watching the polling, the needle is moving fairly quickly to support Democrats. And those states are Colorado, Arizona, Maine, North Carolina, to a lesser degree, maybe a much lesser degree, but they're now in play, Kansas, Iowa, and potentially Georgia. I don't think I missed any there. But the Democrats are increasingly enthusiastic that they will be able to flip the Senate. On the presidential race, there's a big question. There's so many moving factors. What's happening in the country this week and the next couple of weeks will certainly be a turning point one way or the other. So I think if you ask us a month from now, we might have a completely different analysis. But going pre-last weekend, with the coronavirus impact, I would say that Democrats were uniting against Joe Biden. I would argue at the time that it was probably best that Joe Biden was staying in his basement and just getting out of Trump's way. The president's polling is decreasing, and you can see Democrats start to unite. But now there's a question of who's his VP candidate, right? So Amy Klobuchar was top of the list last week, but now with all the civil unrest, she's a former prosecutor in Minnesota with the George Floyd death and all these questionable cases that she prosecuted. That probably hurts her candidacy, and she brought a lot to the table in terms of being a thoughtful, moderate, Midwestern senator. The question is whether or not she's still in the runs. Everyone in the campaign will say she is. Kamala Harris and Val Demings. Val Demings is a congresswoman from Illinois who's a former police chief who was part of the impeachment team. They both represent the African American community. They both got prosecutor creds. And I think Biden, from what I've heard, he is very cognizant going into this VP search that he is likely choosing the next president of the United States. I think the likelihood of him running for re-election, I think from what I've heard from his team, is that's very low, and anything could happen. They're going to be a heartbeat away from the presidency. So he's not looking for someone that can just help win the White House. He's looking for someone that could actually serve as president. So I think understanding that probably puts a lot of candidates off the plate. So right now, I would say it's probably between Kamala Harris, Val Demings, and a woman who no one has ever heard of yet, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham of New Mexico. She's a Latina, probably 4'8" little spitfire. She is smart as the dickens. She called me when she was a candidate for Congress post ACA and told me what brokers need to be worried about in the new ACA environment before I could even get my talking points and my messages out. She's really smart. She's a lot of fun to be around. No one's heard of her. If we're looking for a next generation comedy, someone to add some brevity, I think she'd be great. But maybe now's not the time. So it's a really interesting environment. But I think that we could be. I mean, I think the Republicans are on their heels on this one. But we'll see. Joel, what do you think?
So whenever I'm asked a question, I think about election night 2016. Marshberry was doing a conference for brokers in D.C. I was going to be speaking the day after the election, and I had my PowerPoint slides already with who was Hillary going to put into her cabinet. And so we had a party for everybody, and Joel, you started getting very nervous. Florida went, North Carolina went. The early polling in the Rust Belt was good for Trump. But at 10:10 p.m., I pour myself into the back of an Uber and get a call from our colleague Rob, who says, "Hey Joel, if you still think that Hillary's going to be president, and right now Vegas says that bet 1,000 you'll win 5,000." At the moment, we had no returns from Philadelphia, none from Milwaukee, none from Detroit. So I'm completely convinced, and so I laid it down, and I'm concerned that in the background, my wife is going to find out for the first time I bet $1,000 on Hillary Clinton at 10:15 p.m. on election night. So what do I think about this? Charlie Cook noted, he's a great political pundit here on our call with him last week, that if you think about how the world has changed with the pandemic, with the economic situation, but yet Trump's polling, approve, disapprove, has not changed significantly since last fall. His base is extremely strong. I guess given how sensitive everything is right now, and I think Joel and I basically agree on the contours of all this. I worry that if things don't continue to improve on these, what Trump called insurrection a couple of nights ago, and it definitely was improved last night for us in Washington, D.C., that, we can have more of a cratering of America along a sort of a law and order versus the perception that Democratic mayors are allowing this kind of destruction to occur, and that could play to Trump's base and the coalition that he put together before. I don't know. I tend to believe, the polling that Biden is comfortably ahead, but I believe Hillary Clinton was comfortably ahead 4 hours before she lost. And so then on the Senate, in order, the vulnerable seats are right there in Arizona for you. Martha McSally, I love her. Cory Gardner in Colorado, would love and support him as well. Susan Collins in Maine, love and support her. Tom Tillis in North Carolina. Frankly, we've got a race going in Montana with Bullock running against incumbent Steve Daines. To a lesser extent, you've got 2 Senate seats that are up in Georgia, and to a lesser extent, Joni Ernst in Iowa. Good results for you, Joel, last night as a Democrat, that Iowa Democratic primary voters picked their strongest candidate. I think Joni Ernst will be just fine. Also good news coming out of last night's elections was that in Iowa, Representative Steve King, who's a racist, was upended in the primary. And I would note that the council was the very first organization to deliver a max out check to the guy who beat him, an establishment good, solid Republican. So I'm pleased with that. So it's really tough. As Leader McConnell told us last week, he says we've got 4 or 5 races that are up for grabs right now. They could all go Democratic, they could all go Republican, or we could split it down the middle. And we could be looking at a situation where a runoff in Georgia in January could be determining the outcome of the Senate. And then my final comments would just be on the House of Representatives, where after the special election in California, where Republicans in the LA suburbs against a good, strong Democratic candidate for an open seat won a very compelling victory just 2 weeks ago in a special election. That being said, Republicans are only 17 seats away from retaking the House of Representatives, and I would like to believe that that is possible. We also have 3 times as many retirements or members that are running for other office as Democrats do. And when you look at the map race by race and the national circumstances, that gets to be a very difficult equation. But again, I've probably run on too long. Mike, I know you guys want to stick to your schedule, and I just want to thank you all again so much. And Joel, anything you need to correct for me from the last couple of minutes?
It'll take too long. It's I'm gonna get out of the way. Thank you.
Well, and we want to thank both of you so much for taking the time to visit with us and share your insights with us. And I would like to take this opportunity just to kind of pitch Council PAC, and you know, these guys are working for us every day, and please support their PAC. That's how we're able to get these things done. So thanks again, and that's what. Yeah, go ahead.
One last thing. There was a question asking me to give that email address again to get on the newsletter. Just jwood at ciaboy.com. Thank you.
Thanks for answering that. Yeah. And Vance, we'll turn it back over to you. Thanks.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. Fascinating issues. Great discussion, gentlemen. That's the most united I've ever witnessed those two Joels to be. We didn't even hear Mr. Wood talk once about liberal seances. So thanks again. What a dynamic and changing landscape. We'll all watch with interest how these topics continue to develop. Thanks, Joel and Joel, for your strong influence, relationships, powerful industry advocacy in Washington, D.C. If there was any doubt before, you definitely are earning your money this year. We're now going to honor the agencies who have earned an Agency of Excellence Award for 2019. These agencies represent roughly our top third in profit and organic growth performance and deserve our recognition. We appreciate their outstanding success in 2019. And then following the video, we'll have a short bio and stretch break, but we invite you to keep your Zoom session running, as we'll have some videos playing that during the break that may be of interest to you. And then we'll resume our meeting promptly at 11 a.m. Mountain Time to announce and honor the 2019 Agencies of the Year, followed by Eric Levitt's informative conversation with his brother, Michael O. Levitt. You definitely don't want to miss any of that. So let's go ahead and roll the video, and we'll see you again in a few minutes. Welcome back, everyone, and congratulations to all the Agency Excellence Award winners. That's fantastic. Well done. We're now pleased to spotlight another important carrier sponsor we have here today, Travelers Insurance. Representing Travelers is Regional President Richard Rogers. Thank you for being with us. And after Rich's comments, we're excited to present our Agencies of the Year for 2019. This is the highest recognition an agency can achieve. And there are 3 categories, as a reminder, based on size of the office. So Travelers, take it away.
With over 100 years of risk expertise, Travelers ranks among the top carriers in the country in major lines of insurance. With numerous specialty areas covering a vast array of industries, we have the experience, expertise, and the dedicated resources to help address the unique complexities of your commercial clients. Come see why the Levitt Group has experienced double-digit growth with Travelers Business Insurance over the past 3 years. Travelers, it's better under the umbrella.
Thank you, Vance, and thank you, the Levitt Group, for letting us and allowing us to participate again this year in your conference. I want to congratulate you guys on your great results, both with Travelers and with just yourself. Every year has been very consistent. Thank you for this virtual presentation today. You're still going on, regardless of what's going on in the world relative to COVID or relative to all the other things that we're seeing in the news today. I want to congratulate you guys for that. And I specifically want to recognize your anniversaries and your winning producers. Great job keeping them in the spotlight. Your moral and business integrity clearly shows with all of the carriers that you represent. We're proud to be a partner with you. I'm looking forward to all the rest of the presentations. I love the political one. That was interesting to hear those 2 guys, Joel's going after each other in a positive kind of way. I'm really looking forward to Dixie and Ann hearing their presentation, as I do every year. Again, we hope to be there in person next year, but this is a great way to kick this off with some positive news. Thank you.
A big thank you to Rich and the Travelers team. It is my honor and privilege to present to you today the Agency of the Year Award in the category of agencies with less than 1.5 million in annual revenues. This award goes to, or this year's award goes to, Ferguson Levitt. Ferguson Levitt Insurance has always been passionate about taking care of its customers, earning it a very strong reputation of service and integrity within their community. They take pride in their results and are disciplined, staying within conservative parameters, which allows the operations to run profitably. The agency runs efficiently, which is reflective in its organic growth of almost 10% and a true operating margin year over year of at least 30% or higher. We asked a few people about co-owner Janie Ferguson, and there was no shortage of praise. Comments like, quote, unbelievable work ethic, a heart of gold, takes pride in everything she does, always looks at the good in people. Janie loves those in her office, and she loves her clients and takes care of them like they are family, end of quotes. These attributes, along with many others, have helped Ferguson Levitt build an incredibly strong foundation over the years. As a result, they have become a referral-driven agency. Janie spends time with her horses before she comes into the office in the mornings. This is her therapy and helps to get her through some very long days. Janie is known for her great sense of style. She has a beautiful collection of turquoise, and Jenny Levitt said she's one of the most fun people to go shopping with. Janie has done an amazing job of pushing through difficult times and keeping the most important things in perspective, all while maintaining a positive attitude, laughing, and enjoying the great life she has created. When we asked one of the controllers assigned to the agency for some of her thoughts, she said, quote, when the agency was short-staffed, this co-owner never complained. She just buckled down and did what she needed to do. Because of this, her agency didn't skip a beat. Janie genuinely wants her employees to succeed. She's a fantastic lady and a great example. End of quote. Congratulations again to Janie Ferguson and her team at Ferguson Levitt. Well deserved. We want to turn some time over to Janie if she's available to say a few words.
Greg, thank you very much. After this last year, we're super grateful. Grateful to be part of the Levitt Group. I think without the support that we get from the Levitt Group, none of this would happen. What a great team. Amazing people. We're just very, very thankful. Thank you.
Thank you, Janie. Congratulations. Well-deserved recognition to you and your team. And I'm sure taking care of those horses is one reason you've done so well and kept your sanity in this business. But, well, in this next category, we have so many high-performing offices in this next tier of agencies that it truly represents a remarkable achievement to be selected as this year's top performer.
It's my pleasure to award this year's Agency of the Year Award in the $1.5 million to $4 million revenue category to Berrien Insurance Group of Lone Tree, Colorado. Berrien Insurance Group is a unique retail and wholesale operation with a number of unique, exclusive specialty products and programs. Led by Joe Berrien, an astute industry scholar, advocate, and passionate veteran, there aren't many risks his team can't tackle. Joel is the consummate professional, a deep product expert, one who passionately advocates for our industry and is a promoter of education and superior risk management consultation. He's an innovator, a networker, and a contributor, always willing to assist others. He was recognized last year as our company's Collaborator of the Year and has been active in supporting not only individuals, but our entire group, serving on the LGAA Managing General Committee and on Levitt Group Enterprises Board of Directors. In addition to his professionalism, many contributions, and collegial engagement, his office is a consistent top performer. In 2019, they achieved mid-double-digit organic growth, the highest profit margin of any agency in the entire group, and a whopping Rule of 20 score of 40. In recognition of an amazing performance last year and their ongoing efforts to better our organization, we honor Berrien Insurance Group, co-owner Joe Berrien and team, as this year's Agency of the Year in the $1.5 million to $4 million revenue category. Congratulations. Joe, we invite you now to share a few words of acceptance.
Yes, I'm on. Hey, Vance, thank you very much for this award. I have to tell you, I'm very proud of our team. We couldn't do this without our team. They are knowledgeable, they're skilled, they're committed to providing quality service to all of our customers. I also want to thank the LGAA staff and all of the work that they do to help us. Everything from IT, HR, accounting, legal, E&O. I mean, it allows us to focus on all of our time to work with the insurance companies and also with our mutual clients. So again, thank you very much. This is quite an honor.
All right. Thanks, Joel. Appreciate those comments. And congratulations on an absolutely amazing year. It is now my pleasure to present this year's Agency of the Year Award for agencies larger than $4 million in annual revenue. This year's award goes to CIA Levitt Insurance Agency.
When Dan Bowers perpetuated this agency almost 18 years ago from our good friend Billy Bond, the agency was approaching $900,000 in agency commission and was exclusively in the rural area of Alamosa, Colorado. Now the agency has surpassed $5 million in revenue, has added a location in Colorado Springs, and is actively seeking to expand to a third location with a sizable acquisition. Dan would be the first person to tell you, however, that he has not accomplished this feat on his own. He recognized several years ago that the agency could also benefit from a partner who is focused on the service operations of the agency, so he could dedicate his time to sales. As such, he partnered with Brenda Edgar, a longtime team member, as a co-owner of the agency. Brenda tirelessly leads the operations to ensure her team fully supports the sales team in everything they need to be successful. Additionally, a couple of years ago, Dan and Brenda identified a great sales talent in Gabe Rodriguez and invited him to join the ownership team as well. Together, Dan, Brenda, and Gabe led the agency to a tremendous 2019, achieving organic growth of 11.5%, a remarkable Rule of 20 score of 32.15, and a strong true operating margin that continues to provide the capital to invest and grow. This agency is a prime example of balancing profit and growth to drive success for all of its stakeholders.
Congratulations to our partners in this great agency, as well as everyone watching from CIA Levitt today. Dan, could you please say a few words on behalf of the entire team there?
Hey, I sure will. Good morning, all. You going to cut to me, Joe, or are you going to? I'm teasing you. Hey, good morning, all. And I just want to say, I think first I want to say thank you to the entire team at CI Levitt for making this even possible. I mean, you know, I think what they do every day just makes it happen and makes it rock. In addition to that, though, you know, I think the last 2 or 3 months having to work from home and all the other things that they've had to do just really shows what a great team they are and the great team that they are and we are together. I also would like to make a point that, you know, Brenda and Gabe, thanks for being our partners here. They do a great job and make it happen, along with, I really enjoy being a partner with the Levitt Group, and if I didn't thank the Levitt Group, I'd be remiss. So thanks you for everything you guys do. Cassidy, Shaylin, and the team that we work with every day over at Levitt Group is just, they're a wonderful team, and they just really see the vision of what we're trying to do out here. So thanks a bunch, and we appreciate you recognizing us. So thank you.
Dan, congratulations to you, and congratulations to Janie, and as well as to Joel. We're certainly grateful for the way that you represent the group and in your performance. The Chairman's Award each year is given to a member of our organization who has exemplified the 7 governing principles of the Levitt Group over a long period of time and has distinguished themselves among their peers as one who works hard to serve others and strives to make our organization that much better. This year's Chairman's Award goes to my dear friend Rick Zarazinski. Rick joined the Levitt Group in 1998 when he was a very successful producer at a top brokerage in Portland, Oregon. It was clear to Rick that his dream of building his own agency wouldn't be fulfilled at his then current spot. So he was willing to discuss our proposal of starting an agency from scratch. We both believed firmly that his current employer would be willing to sell his book of business given the strong nature of his relationships with them. But alas, the employer refused, and undaunted and committed to honor his covenant not to take his accounts from his employer, we moved forward with forming Zarazinski Levitt out of a dusty supply closet in his Uncle Don's engineering firm in a sketchy part of Portland. I'll never forget our call on the first day of our new agency venture. He was sitting in that supply closet, assembling the cheap desk he'd purchased and had delivered from Staples that morning. Ah, the glamour of it all. In the intervening 21 years, Rick has led an incredibly motivated and gifted team of producers and account managers in building one of the premier P&C agencies in the Portland area. It's been truly an amazing journey. Like all journeys over the span of time, Rick's journey has included its share of difficulty. In addition to a handful of personal and family struggles that has tested the resilience of Rick and his wonderful wife, Rhonda, including a near and fatal fall from a pine tree he was trimming, the effects of the financial crisis in 2009, 2010, and 2011 dealt a significant blow to the agency's fortunes. Rick's indomitable will to overcome and succeed has time and again allowed him to shake off the effects of disappointment and struggle in order to be successful. Rick is a servant leader. During his nearly 22 years with the Levitt Group, Rick has served for 16 of those years as a member of LGAA's Managing Governing Committee. Perhaps not only a telltale sign of his service mindset and the faith that his peers place in him, but also perhaps reveals a certain gluttony for punishment. Rick's latest service concluded at this conference with our deep and sincere gratitude. It is my honor to give this year's Chairman Award to my good friend and partner, Rick Zarazinski. Rick, we'd welcome a response from you, if you could. He didn't know this was coming, so somebody may need to pick him up off the floor. Rick?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. Well, first of all, you have caught me completely by surprise. I am honored. I am grateful for the kind words. I'm kind of blown away. This group means so much to me and my family, and I try to convey that to the people at the office here. And I am honored to be able to have shared over 20 years with an organization that I hold very dear to my heart. I cannot think of a better partnership, a better friendships. If someone was to go through life and be able to say, this has been a wonderful ride. Without prepared remarks, I can only say that I'm eternally grateful to the opportunity that the Levitt Group gave to me so long ago in 1998. And some guy named Eric Levitt convinced me to join the show. And for that, it was one of the greatest decisions of my life. I count everybody within the Levitt Group as my friends, my colleagues, and I look forward to many more years of interaction and good times with our partners and with our co-owners. I thank you very much for this award. It means a lot to me. I'm just so shocked. But thank you, Eric. I regard you and everybody within the Levitt Group as my friends, my colleagues, and I thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick, and we're deeply grateful for your contribution over the years and the countless hours you spent unpaid, I may say, on behalf of Levitt Group Agency Association, and look forward to many great years together in the future. Thank you for that. Thanks for letting us surprise you with that. Anyway, we wish you the best, and to you and your family. It's my opportunity now to introduce our next speaker, my brother, Governor Michael O. Levitt. Most of you know Mike and have had the opportunity to hear him and to meet him and know him, but let me just give a brief introduction of Mike to you. Mike, of course, led the business in the 80s and into the 90s. And in 1992, Mike was elected Utah's 14th governor and was elected subsequently 2 additional times and served from 1992 until the end of 2003, at which point he was asked by President George W. Bush to lead the Environmental Protection Agency, which he did for about 18 months, and thereafter was asked to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services from 2004 until 2008. Since that time, Mike has founded a consulting firm and a private equity consulting firm called Levitt Partners. Mike has the distinction of actually having likely among the longest shelf lives of relevance of a Health and Human Services Secretary. First, primarily because of the advent of the Affordable Care Act, Mike had deep understanding of the nuances of the healthcare system and its challenges. And since the passing of that act in 2009, Mike has been in demand talking about the reformation of healthcare. During his time as Secretary of Health and Human Services, Mike also revamped the country's emergency readiness plan for pandemics. And so we find Mike also now being in demand with respect to his knowledge and understanding of pandemics and how we as a country need to respond. It's our privilege to have Mike with us, and grateful that he would be willing to spend the next half hour or so with us. We'll note also that Mike is also on Levitt Group Enterprises board and provides a tremendous amount of resource and perspective and insight as he serves there. Mike, welcome to you. Glad to have you with us.
Well, thank you. First, I just want to say congratulations to all of those who have been honored today, and also to say how much I enjoy just being back part of this business. I have missed it, and it feels both familial and something I've greatly missed. And so thanks for including me today, Eric.
It is our pleasure. We want to make note that we will take questions for Mike in the Q&A function app of Zoom. So please feel free to ask those questions. We'll be monitoring that, and I will moderate the questions. We will not be looking and monitoring the chat function, so please use the Q&A function. Mike, we've got to start with COVID-19. Our family has been acutely aware of this risk since really the end of last year, when you so kindly gave us your perspective then, before the rest of the world was really mindful of it. But could you just give us a brief kind of overview and characterize where you think where we are right now as to the pandemic and its progression?
Yes, I think it might be useful if I laid out just that I was able to resolve the mystery. How does a guy from Cedar City become a pandemic expert? You mentioned earlier that I was serving as Secretary of Health, and I just showed up on my schedule one day, an emergency briefing from the Centers for Disease Control, and just listed virus as the subject. And I attended the briefing, and I was told about a virus known as the H5N1 virus, which was a flu virus that they were worried had what they referred to as pandemic potential. Now, I'm going to confess to you that I wasn't at all sure what the word pandemic meant, but I attended the briefing and listened to them teach me that this virus was actually in birds, and that the birds had passed it to people, and that 60% of the people who got this virus died. And they were concerned that it could mutate into a virus that could go from person to person. And they explained to me that when a virus can go from person to person, that's when they considered it a pandemic. Well, I found the conversation interesting, but fully did not grasp what they were telling me. The next morning, a young colleague of mine came into the office, and he was carrying two books. One was a book named The Great Influenza by John Barry. It's a book I still recommend, and by the way, it's become a New York Times bestseller again. And he said to me, "You need to understand this." And he tossed the book onto the table, and he said, "Because if you don't understand this, there's going to be one of these." And he tossed a second book onto the table, which was a congressional investigation of the Secretary of Health about a vaccine that had been developed in 1976 to inoculate millions of Americans for a pandemic flu that never developed. And many people were damaged and hurt and died as a result of that vaccine. And his message to me was, if you don't get the first one right, there's going to be another one of these, and it'll be about you. Well, that caught my attention, and I took it home over the weekend, and I began to read. And the more I began to understand the nature of these pandemics, the more interested I became. And I had the ability to learn from people like CDC, and I began to research and develop and understand this is a very interesting part of the world that I didn't even know about. I went to the White House and I said to the president, I have 2 books for you. And I threw the first one down and said, you need to understand this. Anyway, we went through a similar conversation, and to his credit, he got it. We went to Congress and said, we are not prepared for this. And the Congress appropriated $7.1 billion, and I spent the next 3.5 years moving around America trying to persuade people in the states. I went to 54 states and territories with what we call pandemic summits to say there will be a pandemic. Now, I learned a couple of things from that. The first is that anything you say about a pandemic before it happens sounds alarmist. And what I've subsequently learned is anything you've done in advance turns out to be inadequate. And we're playing that second part out right now because as a country, we were almost entirely caught unprepared. Now, should we have been better prepared? Yes, but it's not unusual. The world has never fully been prepared for a pandemic because they happen a long enough with a long enough spacing that each generation tends to forget. And I think all of us who are now experiencing this are learning to see the world in a slightly different way. We're understanding that there's this side of the world of microbes that are just constantly trying to invade a new host. This virus, this coronavirus, has an RNA root to it that has one purpose. This virus has one genetic purpose, and it's to replicate itself. It is in constant pursuit of replicating itself, and it's just part of biology. So that's a long start, Eric. Let me just say, where are we today? Well, one of the things that we now know is, and we've all become a bit of a pandemic expert, is that these things tend to function in waves. And we're partway through the first wave. And you might think about this as a chronic condition. Now, almost all of us will know someone that has had a chronic condition that was painful. And doctors made a medical intervention, gave them pain medication. But the pain medication came with a warning. Don't use this for too long, or don't use too much of it, because if you do, the side effects could be worse than the pain you're feeling. Well, what we have applied to this, in absence of having a vaccine or some kind of a pill you could take or medicine that you could administer, we have administered the only medical intervention that's available, and that's this social distancing that we've all been doing. And it's had side effects. And so now we see our economy in quite a diminished state. We see the sociologic issues that are beginning to be furthered by this. And I don't think we can separate the degree at which we're seeing the country in turmoil right now from the social distancing that we've all been involved in. We're seeing it in personal ways, every one of us. And so we're at a point now where we are having to find balance between this medical intervention that we've been experiencing and the reality that this is likely to cycle back. It's likely that we'll see some version of this in October or November or December, because the RNA of this virus has one purpose, and it's to reproduce itself. And it's still very much on the march. Now, gratefully, I think we'll be better prepared as a country as we move toward this second phase. And I feel confident that we'll get through this. We're now practicing the balancing here is between these social or group measures. We're now going to be practicing individual measures where we are acting to keep ourselves as well as we can out of the way of this virus, but at the same time keep the economy going. Now, Eric, I'll pause there. That was quite a long answer, but it, I think, lays a predicate for our conversation.
It does. That was a perfect introduction to what our discussion needs to where it needs to go. As I indicated, so many of us are having different experiences in social distancing across the country, but we are all kind of facing this. I referred to it as coming out of the dark a little bit, this transition back. Can you give us a sense for what you think this transition looks like going forward? One of the kind of keystone elements that many of us are looking forward to is, okay, when will large groups events come back, like sports or concerts? How do you view that looking over the next months and years as we transition back?
So I think from here, we're going to see the transition rate. That's how we measure the progress. How many people does an infected person infect themselves? When we first started out, it was quite high. It was 4 or 5 people would be infected by every one. Now we're down to about 1, and in many areas it's starting to dip below 1. And it's when it dips below 1 that it begins to die out, because it's, again, the virus's whole objective is to try to find some way to reproduce itself. And when it can't, then it dies fairly quickly. So getting it below 1 is the key. But there are going to be areas where we'll hear a language around what will be referred to as flare-ups or hotspots. And we'll start to see the virus take root somewhere, and think of it as a forest fire. You're up on an observation platform, you're looking over the forest and you see smoke. And so a team is deployed to that area of smoke because there's a real belief that if we can get in there before it breaks into flame and becomes much larger and spreads uncontrollably, then we can contain it, mitigate it, and put it out. That's this effort we know as tracking and tracing. We find one person that has it. We then need to find out everyone that they have touched and call them and say, you've been in some way or another, you've come in contact with a person who could have given you infected you with this virus. And so we need you to be isolated. That's going to continue, because until we have a vaccine and can begin to create an immune response in a controlled way, then the only thing we have as a society is this capacity to be up above it and see it happen and try to put it out before it spreads. And there are going to be times when we succeed at that, and there are going to be a few times when we fail. And when that happens, then we're going to see cities or regions become infected in ways that will cause them to have to respond in a more aggressive way. Now, I often fly to New York, say, or to Washington, D.C. Before I go, I check the weather. And occasionally it'll say there's a winter storm alert in the east, and don't bother to come because nobody's going to be there. They're all going to be sheltering in place. They're all going to be isolating at home, trying to do business the best way they can, because there is a condition that exists. I think for the next at least year, we're going to be subject to that kind of uncertainty. Now, during the period when that's happening, and it'll happen regionally, and it'll happen in an inconsistent way, and there'll be some areas where it doesn't happen at all, and then there'll be some areas that you wouldn't expect it would happen, and suddenly it'll begin to flare up because someone was in an area and got infected and came back. It happens in a very unexpected and kind of sinister way that it can creep into an area. Until that happens, we're going to be in some ways limiting our activities. You mentioned sports. Well, if you were to look at the way the virus looks for ways to infect other people, you'd say the ideal would be to put a couple of thousand people in the same space. Let's let them stand up and cheer really loudly and use their voice to broadcast. I might add, sometime when you're talking loudly on a call like you are today, hold your hand right here and feel as you begin to become a bit animated, you can begin to feel very tiny droplets on the top of your hand. That's activity coming out of your lungs. And it's the lungs where this virus attacks, and that then begins to broadcast on droplets outside. So put thousands of people in the same place, you can see why sports in arenas and places where those are going to be among the last places to actually, last things to come back. So our firm is working with a lot of colleges and universities, the NCAA. We're having contact with some professional sports organizations, and they acknowledge that they're going to have to find ways over the next year. So I think we'll end up having sports, but it's just going to be different than what we've had at least for the next year, in my view. There may be limited attendance, but they'll do everything they can to create sport because it's their business and it's an important part of American culture.
Thank you. We've got a couple of questions that are somewhat aligned, and so I'm going to have been asked. One by Aaron Codlin, one by Philip Gothorpe, but I'm going to make them into one. Essentially, the fact that it's an election year has maybe magnified the sociological elements that you talked about earlier. The question is how do you see this election year affecting it? Has it helped or hindered the progress? I think I know the answer to that. And then the question is that in your analysis in preparation when you were secretary, did you contemplate this this kind of added element of politicization of the response?
So let me just mention one thing. If you think about the month of November, by November, we're going to know a lot more about the economy. Will it be U-shaped? Will it be L-shaped? Will it be V-shaped as far as recovery? We'll know a lot more by November. We'll also know whether there's going to be an active second wave of the coronavirus, and those won't be unrelated. And we'll also know what the power structure of the United States will be. So if you think about October, November, and December, those may be among the most consequential months in shaping the future that we have had. Now, did we contemplate division as we were planning? The answer is yes. These, as you study pandemics, as I had the occasion to do, going back literally into 400 BC, you can see that societies respond to these things in very similar ways. It unsettles the economy, always. It unsettles the sociology, always. It drives change. It affects individuals, and it affects the politics. And why is that? It's because everybody has a different set of priorities. Everyone has a different set of circumstances, and everyone has a different risk tolerance. And so politics is about trying to blend circumstances, priorities, and risk tolerance. And so you look at just Republican and Democrat. Republicans tend to have a higher risk tolerance than, say, Democrats do. Democrats tend to want the government to provide security. Republicans tend not to want the government to be involved in things. So there is a natural collision here among that's not just because of a pandemic, but it literally aligns all of that human nature at one time. And in a way, that's just an extension of this natural world that we're becoming better acquainted with.
Thank you. Many of us who are working from home also have our children joining us. Melissa and I have had that circumstance. We thought we were empty nesters, and then we got two of our children back, and we were grateful for that, but we're certainly not alone. We also have friends and colleagues that have young children at home, and they're trying to manage that. Give us a sense for, we talked about sports, schools, and what unique circumstances that exist in the decisions across different locales to open schools and how they might be open.
So again, I think it's important to acknowledge that this decision will be different in almost every community. later today, I'm involved in a session like this that will have superintendents from schools in all over the country. We'll have over 1,000 that will be on, and we'll be talking about the decision to open or close schools, and we'll be talking about what are the options. But the important thing is to say, first, this isn't a decision that'll be made in Washington. It actually isn't a decision that will in most cases be made by the governor. It's likely to be a decision made by a local school board because that's the way we've constructed education. So what's the criteria by which they will make that decision? Well, it will likely have to do with what is the transmission rate in that area. I used that term before. If a person gets sick, how many more people are getting sick? That measures the danger. They'll be looking at the level of hospital capacity they have. If suddenly we have a flare-up, are we going to overrun the hospitals? They'll be looking at the whole series of metrics like that, and they'll say, there's a risk here, but it's not a risk where the side effects will be. It's a risk where the side effects could be worse than the disease. So then they will begin to open. But if they open, it's probably not going to look a lot like, not going to look exactly like we talked about. Let me use some examples. We know, for example, that the virus is spread by respiratory activity. Well, in the past, in third period, your student might have gone to choir. So if do you really want to have people standing shoulder to shoulder, singing with a loud voice, broadcasting those droplets to each other? That's a highly risky proposition. So the schools are going to have to say, if we're going to open, we might have to have chorus classes where we space people 6 feet apart. We're all having to learn a new set of not just social skills, but also protective skills on how to make individual decisions as opposed to the government making a big collective decision like we're all going to close. I think you could see students who go half-time and are online half-time. You might go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday on another week. You might end up having morning, afternoon. There could be a lot of different variations, but every school district right now is trying to figure out, should we open? And if we open, what's the extent to which we can normalize our activity?
So the analog to schools obviously are offices. We're all in the process. We have 140 plus locations in 21 states, and what we have done is given local management the final say on when to open, on how to open. What would you say what do you say to your corporate clients in making those decisions? Is it different than what you just gave us in schools, or give us some insight there?
Well, we can identify the 6 or 7 ways that this virus looks for opportunities to spread. For example, you'll notice at the grocery store that they have marked the aisles going down one aisle and back another way. That's because the way traffic moves has an impact. If you're all moving the same direction, the likelihood that you're going to bump into each other is low. If you're going both directions, the chance that you're going to have close proximity, that's an opportunity that the virus looks for to be able to jump from one person to another through touch. Another I've talked about is respiratory output. So that's a matter of, that's where the masks become important. That's where spacing becomes important. People in close proximity. Eric, at some point, I'm happy to share with all of the offices just a little more information about those 7 ways this happens. And the reason that's relevant is we have to go on living our lives. And if we're armed with an understanding of what the things are to look for, then we can begin to not just protect ourselves, but we can create an environment. I was in a setting yesterday where we were talking about how do you do a sales call? If you're in a client's office, what's the protocol? Well, for example, I think we owe it to people to wear a mask. It's not just good etiquette now, it's part of, and that's a little unusual, but very much something that people want to see, because there are people who have very low risk tolerance who feel a bit offended by the fact that you're not protecting them by wearing a mask, sitting at a distance, just acknowledging, using hand sanitizers, kind of cleaning up after ourselves. These all become symbols of how we care and the way we're now showing our politeness and our consideration. So can we open? I think we have to.
Yeah.
We stay safe? I think absolutely. Does everybody have to do it the same way? No. If you don't have to be at work, I mean, I think you get the point, Eric. There are ways we can both live a fulfilling life, keep our businesses going, and be able to stay safe. But it's a matter of just understanding how this virus works and then stopping, thinking, and changing the way our habits.
Yeah, that's a terrific point. And your point about the symbol is a mask being a symbol of our caring for others is really important, because I think the mask has become a politicized symbol for political divide. And if we recast our use of masks as being an act of kindness as opposed to an act of defiance, whether wearing it or not, that's a very valuable thing. We have time for just two quick questions. I want to talk a little bit about the vaccine, what you foresee there, what you're hearing from the CDC and other sources. We'll start with that. And then the final question is really just, given the amount of information that we have, information overload, much of which is so polarized and opposing each other, where do we look for information that we can rely upon?
Well, let's start with vaccine. Just a reminder, a vaccine is not every vaccine is perfectly effective with everyone, and there are dangers with the vaccine. What we're doing with a vaccine is basically taking the virus itself and injecting a little bit of it into a patient, chemically altered in a way that it doesn't replicate itself. But it does not always create the same immune response with everybody. But it's the best thing we have to be able to drive a wide immunity, which gets that replication rate down below 1. There are, I will say that our firm is involved in tracking for a government agency. And I can say that there are many different efforts that are going. If you boil it down to the top 14 or 15, I'll just summarize it this way. We have a real shot as a country of being able to have a vaccine and to manufacture enough that we could have widespread distribution by the end of the year. But for that to happen, everything would have to happen perfectly. And I will add, that rarely happens when you're working with science and large-scale execution. So in my view, the most rational point of view is to say, we'll start to see distribution of a vaccine maybe toward the end of the first quarter, and then it will be more a gradual process. They're not going to run out and give it to everybody all at one time. They're going to stage it. Healthcare workers will get it. First responders will get it. People who are in high risk will get it. But by the end of next year, my guess is we'll be in a position where vaccines are having a real impact. But that means that we're likely to go through almost a year and a half where we're having to use these new skills that we're talking about in order to both have a fulfilling life and to stay safe. Now, you had one final one, Eric, and maybe I've...
Trusting, what source of information can we trust?
So there is just a lot of misinformation, and the Centers for Disease Control has been caught into this debate. But I will tell you, those are honest professionals who are trying to come up with the best answer in an atmosphere where the knowledge is changing and improving. Local health departments are very good, trusted news sources, and that's not the internet. You might, if you're looking at a trusted newspaper that has high editorial standards, you can be, I think, become pretty certain that they have adequately vetted it.
Thank you. I will tell you that in the 7 minutes since you quickly mentioned you have these 7 points you want to share. My phone has been blowing up, and so we're going to be compelled to get that from you.
Yeah,
So-
I'll send it. In fact, if you'd like, Eric, maybe we could do a webinar on a separate day where we could talk about it. It's a discussion that is really about, everybody in this gathering knows our parents. We love deeply, who happen to fall into an age category where they have to be more careful. And so like I suspect almost everyone here who love their parents, we've done our best to encourage them. And I got a call from Dad one day saying, just want you to know I've swum the moat. And what I knew that to mean is he couldn't stand it anymore and he'd gone to the office. And that was fine because there was nobody there. But it's an indication and a reminder that you can only do so much of this and there's going to be some side effects. And we're all feeling it. And the antidote here is that we can learn how to identify the risks and just stay away. We can still, we can have our grandchildren over, we have our children over, we can do things with friends. We just have to structure it a little differently. We can open our office. We just have to structure it in a way that is keeping us and other people safe. So Eric, if you'd like to do something like that, I'd be more than happy to meet with those electronically and share these tools, because I think they're very important to a business ultimately having the ability to operate and stay safe.
That'd be terrific. We will take you up on. Thank you for your generosity. Mike, we're so grateful for your, not just your generosity of time, but your generosity of spirit and the way you engage with us. We're grateful to have you, and not just as a member of our board, but as a member of our family, and we understand the nature of your commitment to us, and we're grateful to you for it. You mentioned Mom and Dad. If you have a minute, Mom and Dad are on the docket next to speak to the conference, and I know that they're deeply proud of you, as we are as well.
Thank you. I'll be there.
Good. Thank you. All right. It is time now for us to do what we do every conference, is to hear from our founders. We are so grateful to have them. For those of you, many on this call have never been to a conference. One of the great elements of this virtual conference is that we can share this conference with more people, and we're grateful to do that. We close each conference hearing from our parents, Ann and Dixie Levitt, who've founded this company and did it as a real team. And we're grateful to them, and we would now like to turn the time over to them for a few remarks. Mom and Dad.
All right, we're on. We're here together, shoulder and shoulder, as you see, and we've been looking forward to it as we always do when we see you before us, but now we know you're before us. In the 1960s and 70s, when Dixie and I were young, we loved a group called the Lettermen. We hummed along to them as they sang, "No man is an island, no man stands alone." The three guys singing may or may not have felt a kinship to John Donne, whose words they sang. But John Donne wrote their lyrics almost 400 years before they were born. In 1627, John Donne wrote, "No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor house of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee." Neither the Lettermen nor certainly not John Donne could have imagined just how involved in mankind we would be in the year 2020. They could not have imagined the power we possess to see into the furthest corners of the earth, and that every morning for weeks before we brushed our teeth, We check on the world, hopeful for a lessening of the sorrows. Suddenly, it has become much more clear just how connected we really are. We can see funeral processions in a tiny town in Italy where hundreds die. We feel wrenched in our souls, partly from compassion and partly from fear. In the year 2020, John Donne, we see your point. In another part of Donne's meditation that nobody sings about, he compares suffering to gold. He argues that we can never have enough of our neighbor's pain. In his words, no man hath affliction enough that is not matured and ripened by it. In other words, being aware of another's pain only makes us stronger and more able to live well. Since last year's conference, we've had an improbable but sweet adventure of connection. Improbable because it involves a group of brave African women whose gold of suffering overflows. Sweet because we've been privileged to observe the remarkable healing ministry of a woman aptly named Grace. Through a series of unlikely occurrences, we became acquainted with Grace Nyirabalinda of Kigali, Rwanda. Grace is one of hundreds of women victims of genocide in that small African nation. She's from the Tutsi tribe, and the Tutsis were the object of the horror. Grace was widowed twice, lost 7 of her siblings, and somehow lived through the unthinkable trauma. In our comfortable lives, we were barely aware. From time to time, our newspapers carried small back page stories of the tragedies in Rwanda, and someone made a movie called Rwanda Hotel. We shook our heads in sad disbelief, but it was far away, and there were no names or faces to remember, so we forgot. But then there was Grace. She was real, her experiences unforgettable, her realities compelling. Here in her limited English, which is considerably better than my Kenya Rwanda, a small excerpt of her story. In 1964, they killed my first husband and burned our house. I went back to my big family. Mom and Dad had 11 children. The Hutus killed 7. Now there are 4. I remarried a soldier, and they shot him when he was protecting from the old military coming to kill people. In my life, I always think to revenge, but was not possible. Our government began teaching about peace and reconciliation, the good things. Jesus come to me and remind me how he died for me. I repentance myself and give them forgiveness. It's the time I got joy and happiness. Now I can help everyone, even those who killed my family. I have a group of women. My focus is to help them learn how they work together and working for peace. My story is too long. I share in shortest. And Grace writes small stories of her 12 women, each widowed or orphaned, each a victim of the genocide. As their stories unwind, it becomes clear that through Grace, each one has been rescued from physical, emotional, and spiritual starvation. To sustain them physically, she taught them to sew and established a small sewing shop where they could come together and produce saleable goods. She called her shop Amaroho Ama Hejuru, which in Kinyarwanda means peace from heaven. She offers emotional healing by helping them to talk about their painful stories. She listens, and their hearts open, and healing begins as she shares their burdens. Grace sent us a small biography of each woman, along with their pictures. From brief accounts, we get a glimpse of the courage it has taken to emerge from the darkness. Always Grace bears the burdensome role of the listener. She writes of Claudine. She was 12 when they killed her family. Every day she comes with much tears and crying. I spent time to hear her. Now she is happy. We start with a prayer in the morning. We have a few minutes to hear from everyone before we start our work. Grace became my friend. It was easy to love Grace. She learned of a missionary returning to the United States and asked him to bring a gift to me. It was a bag made by the women in their small workroom, a very classy bag. It outstrips Vera Bradley. All kinds of pockets and zippers, a place for everything. An idea was born. Could we somehow help these remarkable women whose indomitable spirits testify to the miracle of human resilience? Could we possibly add to their prosperity and thereby bless their lives? Brooke to the rescue. Brooke, who has the key to all things wonderful, contacted Grace and inquired whether or not their small group was up to the challenge. Could they make 400 bags and find a way to ship them to new friends across the world? They certainly could. They certainly would. Their joyous response was palpable. So, when you see these bags, bright African textiles, carefully crafted into perfection, see in your mind's eye a woman treadling her machine in a small shop, Amahoro Ama Kejuro in Kigali, Rwanda, and feel a measure of connection, of involvement with mankind. And here's another important aspect. When you receive your bag, search for the label. You'll learn that what you've been given is a bag of grace. Think what you can do with a bag of grace. Open your heart and let your mind fill with ideas. Now you'll have it ready to use at a moment's notice. Pull some out when your neighbor needs help at an inconvenient time. Slip a bit under your tongue when you're about to say something you'll be sorry you said. The possibilities to deploy grace are endless. As you find ways to use your supply, you'll agree with John Donne, grace is gold. So my grace attend you as you go on your way. Thank you. It's you.
Was it my turn?
Yes, it is.
Well, I sat here and enjoyed her remarks that she has so aptly prepared. And she tried to convince me that I should try to do the same type of thing and write it down and know what I'm going to say. As usual, I failed. And I'll tell you a little story of what I'm wanting to do. It is my desire to be able to express to you my love and my gratitude for the opportunity to be associated in any way with you. I just can't believe what has happened over our lifetimes. And I know that you have my sons keep us in mind, and they have told you stories of as we've grown the business. And I really do appreciate that. And there's been many, many things over a lifetime. But I had an experience here yet in this last week that made me decide what I wanted to kind of focus upon. Years ago, when Anne was young, I'm talking about...
And beautiful.
And beautiful. She's always been that and still is. But years ago, when she was in her late 30s and early 40s, and the boys were getting older, and she thought she had time to get into some of the hobbies, like potting or whatever whatever type of thing that she might want to do. And she has lots of wonderful hobbies that she's very good at. And so I built her a little place out in the backyard then of what was called Levitt Stadium. And we called it the Roundhouse because it was right in the corner and then it circled around. And that's where she was going to perform, keep all of her stuff that would enable her to carry out her party. Well, time didn't really develop that way. As our sons, as they've grown, we and marry, we get grandchildren. And, you know, that's the greatest thing. And my wife, my wonderful wife now, she's the greatest grandmother in the world. And she's got 39 grandchildren, but over 51. In fact, Eric just got a new granddaughter, grandson yesterday. And that, I think, makes 51 or 52 great grandchildren. Her life is so filled with serving with them. And as a result, the roundhouse that I put in here, some got been used as a storage place for things that we didn't know what else to do with. And I had boxes and boxes, and Dane, my son, who were in South Africa, he had a lot of boxes and has helped a lot in keeping records. And as I was preparing to do something with that roundhouse to accommodate a grandson for an office space for him during this pandemic area, I went out there and I pulled out a couple of boxes of these, what I thought was junk. Opened them up, and you can't imagine the treasures that I found there in those boxes. Going clear back into the 1960 and 64 and 8 and on up. And the remembrances that would come to me makes me really, really grateful that for the blessings in my life. I am a blessed man. I'm really a blessed man to have a companion like I have with my beautiful wife, who is so talented and gifted as Anne. She, a year earlier, was about 5'7" tall. She's now somewhat lower than that, but her spirit is still there. It's a dominant spirit. And we have 6 sons, and they're all wonderful men, each one with their own individual personalities. And they're each striving and succeeding in the things that they're trying to do. And what they contribute to mankind is really, I'm grateful for. And I'm grateful to you, our senior executive groups within the Levitt Group. What can I say to you? I can't say enough. You are so wonderful here, and you carried out the desires of the Levitt family heart in being true to the ethics and the standards that we desire to set here within our business as we go along. I appreciate this very much and want you to know that. I won't name you individually because there's so many of you. I won't get into that type of thing, but I do want you personally to know that I recognize you and want to express gratitude. And to Brooke, who, with the help of all these IT people, have been able to put together this virtual Zoom meeting where there's over 1,150 people who are tuned in here at one time or another to have made this a fulfillment. Because in my mind's eye, I could really look down here at the Kierland, Scottsdale, Arizona, for us to be there in all of our dress and glamour at this particular point, to have this reunion or this conference and to be honoring those who receive gifts. I want you to know how appreciative I am of them. And out of every bad time as I've gone through my boxes, I've only gone through 2 of them. I've got about 25 of them left. But in here, there were hard times in my life. There were hard times and there were great times when you successful in getting a client or whatever it might be, if in the legislative body successful getting a client that you started out to do, or within my family. Those are wonderful experiences and memories that I have here that I've got to assimilate. And it brought back to me this memory of how grateful I should be, and I am, because of all the blessings that I've been given. And you out there in this whole vast audience are part of those blessings. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you for a moment. We do love you. Thank you very much.
Eric, I promised Brooke I'd say something that I forgot.
Yeah, please do.
Well, she just told me to say that in order to receive the bags, you have to check something. And
I can cover that. We'll make sure that happens.
All right.
So, let me just quickly before I do that, Mom and Dad, thank you for those your always wonderful message to us. For those who don't know Mom and Dad, they've become accustomed to me disclosing personal information like this. But Dad will be 91 in a couple of months, and Mom just turned 88. They will this month, at the end of this month on June 30th, they will celebrate 70 years of marriage, which is terrific. We acknowledge the sacrifice that they've made to as Dad put it, stay within the castle and not swim the moat, because that's not their instinct, and they are keeping themselves safe. I would say largely not out of self-preservation, but as a blessing to us that we can have them safe and sound. And it's our prayer that they will remain safe and sound as we work through the difficulties that we're facing in our day to day. Mom and Dad, thank you so much for that. What Mom was referring to, folks, is on the chat. You will note, at least I think everyone can see it. Yes, you can. There is a note that if you would like one of these bags that Mom talked about, that Grace and her wonderful Rwandan co-workers and co-partners made, that we would love to have one of those bags be a gift for you. We'd anticipated handing these out at the conference, but because of the current circumstances, it will not allow us. But in that chat, you can see there is a link to a spreadsheet. And it's our hope that you would fill that out with your name and address and shipping information. And it would be our pleasure to send you one of these bags as a gift until the supplies run out. I think there are 400 total. And so we'd encourage you to order those. We ask that you keep it with one per household until those supplies are gone. Mom and Dad, again, thank you so much for the blessing that you are to us, the example that you are to us, and for the wonderful messages that we received from you today. We're now at the close of our conference, ladies and gentlemen. We're so grateful to each of you for your participation. We're grateful for the many people that have made this conference so great. It's important that we first and foremost thank our sponsors, our wonderful carrier and vendor partners, without whom we could not do this conference. You can see that the sponsors there. We thank them, especially our diamond sponsors, who've been so generous to us during this conference. Again, make note of those names. We're so grateful to each of them. If it's okay, let me just put them back up. Let me just say them one by one, if that's okay. Scott, you can do it again. There you go. AmTrust Mutual of Omaha, WCF Insurance, EMC, Travelers, CRC Group, Burns and Wilcox, Patra Corp, CNA, and Worldwide Facilities. Thank you to you good folks, you ladies and gentlemen who have been so helpful. Colonial Life, Vertifor, Boundless, Progressive, Colonial General Agency, Mutual of Enumclaw, Oregon Mutual, Liberty Mutual, Safeco, Voya Financial, National Benefit Services, Chubb, the Hartford, Encompass, Emeritus, ADP, and the Main Street America Group. Thank you for your sponsorship. We should note that the Main Street America Group is the sponsor of the last event in our conference, which occurs tomorrow, which is the Tour de Levitt that's being done virtually. Those of you who have a desire to participate in that, you can by utilizing the Strava app, fitness app. We encourage you to join us on the app, and we're looking forward to our participation tomorrow in that event. Next year, we will be at the Westin Anaheim in Anaheim, California. It's a brand new facility that I think is slated to finish at the end of this year and will be among the first large groups that they will have. Make note on your calendar, June 8th through the 11th of 2021. We're sure hopeful we can be together at that time. We believe we will. But as we have come to understand in all things, we'll be flexible and we'll see how things move forward in the coming months. As we close, I just want to make some acknowledgments to the people in the Levitt Group who've been so effective at executing this conference. This was done really in a much shorter time frame in terms of preparation, because up until really the first part of April, we were all systems go to be in Scottsdale. But I'm amazed at the quality of the effort. I'm not surprised, but I remain amazed at what they can do. I want to thank my teammates, members of the Office of the CEO, Vance Smith, Joe Collister, Greg Suman, and Mike Chittister, as well as LaVonna Adams and Mike Evans. They took leadership of this conference, and I'm so grateful to them. I want to thank Melanie Johnson and her team in the communications, media, and marketing. These good folks have worked tirelessly to make this conference work so effectively, and the amazing video presentations that we were able to partake of, even virtually. So grateful to them. I want to thank Scott Hannigan and his information systems team. They were pressed into action to become producers of the technical element of this, and it's gone off largely flawlessly. We rely on technology in ways that are so valuable to us, but we're so grateful for Scott and his teams for the way that they have put this together. We want to especially thank Brooke McNaughton, who for whom this is a huge undertaking. It's among probably 3 or 4 massive undertakings that she has throughout the year, in addition to managing a team of very capable people on our event staff and our travel teams. Brooke is also a busy mom of very active children. She and Mac have a very active household. We acknowledge Mac's help and his patience and forbearance during these months as Brooke prepares for the conference. As we close, let me just say this. The circumstances in the world today are difficult. They are ever changing. And we, as Mike indicated earlier, we face the need to adapt in ways that maybe are uncomfortable to us. I have a strong belief and a strong set of experiences that tell me that as we seek to adapt joyfully and happily throughout difficulty, that we are benefited from it. But not only are we benefited from it, those we work with, those we lead, those we associate with are benefited when they see a positive affect that we give off despite uncertainty and trouble and challenge. I'd encourage each of us to think about that. Think about how people watch us, how people take from us positive energy if we are willing to give it and exude it. The ability for us to exude positive energy is within each of us. And I express to you a desire and a challenge to do that as you move forward, as you serve clients, as you work together with your cohorts in your offices. Please know of our love and our gratitude, our desire to move forward positively with you, and our expectation that we will move forward positively, irrespective of how we are required to do so over the next couple of years in response to the current challenges. We look forward to being together as co-owners with co-owners in September. We have the regional meetings coming up. It's our expectation that circumstances will allow us to do that. We look forward to that. And we especially look forward to being together in person again next year at the Westin in Anaheim. Usually this is where we say travel safe. I know I'm going to travel safe as on my way into the kitchen to grab lunch that I'm sure will be there when I go. It's a different type of travel that we're doing now, but be safe. Be mindful of those around you. Be respectful of those who may be more vulnerable and may take action and let's be respectful of each of them as we move forward. Thank you so much for all you do, and we will now be adjourned.